The man's hands stopped moving. For 7 years, those hands had never hesitated. Not once. Not during cardiac arrests, not during gunshot wounds, not during the worst traumas that rolled through the emergency room doors at 3 a.m. But now, staring at the woman bleeding out on his table, Dr. Darius Cole's hands went completely still. He knew that face. He'd seen it in his nightmares for 2,555 nights straight. Victoria Chen. The CEO who had destroyed everything he'd built. The woman who had taken his career, his reputation, his future, and never looked back. She was dying, and he was the only one who could save her. What he did next would haunt him forever. Before we begin, drop a comment telling me which city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe and that notification bell so you don't miss what happens next. The call came at 2:47 a.m. Darius Cole had been reviewing discharge paperwork when his pager screamed.
Trauma 1. Incoming. 6 minutes out. He pushed back from the desk and moved. After 12 years in emergency medicine, his body knew the rhythm. Walk fast, don't run. Running scared the nurses. Running made people think someone was already dead. Dr. Patterson met him in the hallway. Multiple vehicle accident on the interstate. We've got 3 incoming. Worst one is a female, late 40s, internal bleeding. She coded once in the ambulance. They brought her back. How long was she down? 4 minutes, maybe 5. Darius nodded. 4 minutes without oxygen. Brain damage started at 6. They were working with margins thinner than paper. Trauma team? Already assembling, but Darius... Patterson paused. Something flickered across his face. Uncertainty. Maybe concern. The paramedic said she had a corporate ID badge, some kind of executive. There might be attention on this one. She bleeds red like everyone else. I know, I'll handle it.
Darius walked into Trauma 1. The nurses were prepping. Maria, his best trauma nurse, had already laid out the surgical kit. She'd worked beside him for 4 years. She knew how he operated. Clean, efficient, no wasted motion. "What's our window?" she asked. "Small," she coded in the field. "Blood type?" "Get O negative ready. We'll type her when we can." The double doors crashed open. Paramedics pushed through, voices overlapping, hands moving, the controlled chaos that Darius had learned to read like sheet music. Female, 47, driver in a 3-car pileup, blunt force trauma to the abdomen. BP was 60/40 in the field. We pushed fluids, got her back to 80/55. She's been in and out of consciousness. Possible internal hemorrhage. Get her on the table. Darius pulled on his gloves. The team transferred the patient. Someone cut away her blouse. Someone else attached monitors. The familiar symphony of beeps and alarms filled the room. Darius leaned over the patient, ready to assess, and then he saw her face. The world went silent. Not quiet, silent, as if someone had reached into a skull and turned off the volume on reality itself. Victoria Chen. Older now, hair shorter than he remembered, lines around her eyes that hadn't been there 7 years ago. But the face, that face, was burned into his memory with the precision of a brand mark. The last time he'd seen her, she'd been sitting at the head of a mahogany conference table, speaking in that calm, measured voice that never wavered, never apologized, never showed a single crack of human feeling. "Dr. Cole, the board has reviewed the evidence. Given the circumstances surrounding patient 847's death and MedTech's need to maintain public confidence in our cardiac device line, we have no choice but to recommend the immediate suspension of your surgical privileges pending full investigation." He remembered the way she'd looked at him, through him, like he was already gone, like he'd never really existed at all. "Dr. Cole?" Maria's voice cut through the fog. "Doctor, we need you." Darius blinked. The monitors were screaming. Victoria's blood pressure was crashing. The numbers on the screen were dropping like stones thrown off a cliff. BP's at 60/35 and falling. She's hemorrhaging internally. We need to open her up now. Doctor! Darius looked at his hands. They were shaking. For the first time in 12 years, his hands were actually shaking. He could walk away. The thought came unbidden, rising from some dark corner of his mind that he'd spent years trying to seal shut. He could step back, call another surgeon, cite a conflict of interest. No one would question it. No one would know. And she would die on this table while they waited for someone else to arrive. Dr. Cole, we're losing her. Darius closed his eyes. In the darkness behind his eyelids, he saw his daughter, Maya. 8 years old, dark curls like his mother, sharp eyes like his own. Every night before bed, she asked him the same question. Did you help people today, Daddy? And every night, he told her the truth. He opened his eyes. Scalpel. Maria handed it to him without hesitation. Darius made the first incision. The surgery took 3 hours and 47 minutes. Victoria Chen's spleen had ruptured. Her liver had 3 lacerations. She had internal bleeding in 4 separate locations. By every medical standard Darius had ever learned, she should have died on that table. But Darius Cole was very good at his job. He'd been good before MedTech destroyed him. He was better now. 7 years of overnight shifts in an underfunded public hospital had honed him into something sharper, faster, more precise. When you operated in Trauma 1, you didn't have the luxury of backup teams and specialist consultations. You had your hands, your training, and the thin margin between life and death. Victoria coded twice more during the procedure. Both times, Darius brought her back. His hands moved with mechanical precision, suturing, clamping, cutting, repairing. His face showed nothing. His mind showed nothing. He had learned, long ago, to separate the patient on the table from the person they were in the world. At 6:34 a.m., he stepped back from the table. She's stable. Get her to the ICU. Someone call her emergency contacts. Maria stared at him. Darius, are you okay? I'm fine. You don't look fine. You look like you've seen a ghost. I said I'm fine. He stripped off his gloves and walked out of the trauma bay. His legs felt wooden. His chest felt hollow. The corridor stretched ahead of him like a tunnel with no end. He made it to the supply closet before his knees gave out. Darius sat on the floor between shelves of gauze and saline bags, his back against the wall, his head in his hands. For a long moment, he didn't move. He just breathed, in and out. The same technique he'd taught himself 7 years ago, when the panic attacks had started, when the nightmares had come every night, when he'd wondered if he would ever feel like himself again. Victoria Chen. Of all the emergency rooms in all the hospitals in this city, she had ended up in his. The universe had a cruel sense of humor. 7 years ago, Darius Cole had been a star. Not the word he would have used. He'd never been comfortable with self-promotion. But it was accurate. At 31 years old, he was the youngest chief of cardiac surgery at MedTech Memorial Hospital. His success rate on valve replacements was the highest in the state. Medical journals published his research. Teaching hospitals flew him in for guest lectures. Colleagues called him the future of cardiac medicine. He had a wife, Sarah, beautiful and ambitious, and certain that their life together was going to be extraordinary. They'd bought a house in the suburbs. They'd talked about children. The future stretched ahead like a highway with no traffic, nothing but open road and blue sky. Then came patient 847, Harold Washington. 63 years old, retired teacher, father of 4, grandfather of 7. He'd come in for a routine valve replacement using MedTech's latest cardiac device, the Ventricare 3000, their flagship product, the device that was going to revolutionize heart surgery. The surgery went perfectly. Darius had performed it himself. Every measurement was correct. Every suture was precise. Harold was joking with nurses 6 hours post-op, asking when he could go home and finish building the treehouse for his grandchildren. 12 hours later, Harold Washington was dead. The device had malfunctioned. Some flaw in the design caused catastrophic failure under specific conditions. Conditions that no one at MedTech had anticipated, because no one at MedTech had done adequate testing. Darius knew the truth immediately. He'd opened Harold Washington's chest in a desperate attempt to save him, and he'd seen the evidence with his own eyes. The device had failed. Not human error, not surgical complication. The device. He reported his findings to the hospital administration. He expected accountability. He expected a recall. He expected MedTech to do the right thing. Instead, he got Victoria Chen. She arrived 3 days after Harold's death. CEO of MedTech Dynamics, the parent company that owned both the hospital and the device manufacturer. She had an entourage of lawyers and PR specialists. She had data prepared by internal investigators. She had a narrative ready to deploy. Dr. Cole, the evidence suggests that the surgical team deviated from standard implantation protocols. While we deeply regret Mr. Washington's passing, our internal review indicates that the Ventricare 3000 performed within specifications. The failure appears to be procedural in nature. Darius had stared at her across the conference table. That's a lie. The lawyers shifted. Victoria Chen's expression didn't change. I understand this is difficult, Dr. Cole. Losing a patient is always painful. But the facts, I've been a cardiac surgeon for 9 years. I know what a device malfunction looks like. I held the broken pieces in my hands. Your device killed him. Your internal investigation is protecting your stock price. How many other Ventricare 3000 devices are in patients right now? How many other people are walking around with ticking time bombs in their chests? Victoria Chen folded her hands on the table. Her voice remained perfectly level. Dr. Cole, I understand you're upset, but I need you to consider your position carefully. MedTech Memorial has been your professional home for 5 years. Your research funding, your surgical privileges, your standing in the medical community, all of it flows through institutional support. Making public accusations that contradict official findings would be inadvisable. Are you threatening me? I'm explaining reality. The board has reviewed the evidence. Your surgical privileges are suspended pending investigation. If the investigation clears you, you'll be reinstated. If it doesn't, she spread her hands slightly. Well, that's beyond my control. Darius stood up. You're going to cover this up. People are going to die. People die every day, Dr. Cole. Our job is to minimize how many and move forward. She gathered her files and stood. I suggest you use the investigation period to consider your future. Sometimes, the most successful careers are built on knowing when to accept the inevitable. She walked out. The lawyers followed. Darius was left alone in the conference room, staring at the empty chair where she'd sat. 3 weeks later, the investigation concluded that Harold Washington's death was caused by surgical team deviation from protocol. Darius was offered a choice: accept the findings and resign quietly, or fight and face formal charges that would destroy his license entirely. His lawyer was blunt. They've got institutional backing, documentation, and deeper pockets than you'll ever have. You fight this, you lose. And you lose everything. Sarah left him 6 months after his resignation. She couldn't handle what he'd become. The anger, the depression, the endless nights staring at the ceiling. "I didn't sign up for this," she said. "I signed up for the future, not for watching you self-destruct." She was 3 months pregnant when she walked out. Darius didn't know until a lawyer's letter arrived 8 months later. Sarah had given birth to a daughter. She didn't want custody. She didn't want contact. She wanted Darius to sign papers acknowledging that she had no parental obligations. Maya arrived in his life on a Tuesday afternoon, delivered by a social worker who handed him a car seat and a folder of documents. 6 weeks old, dark eyes wide open, staring at him with an expression of complete trust. In that moment, everything changed. Darius stopped drinking. He stopped raging. He stopped caring about Victoria Chen or MedTech or the career he'd lost. None of it mattered anymore. Only Maya mattered. He took the overnight shifts at the public hospital because they were the only ones available for a disgraced surgeon with a tarnished record. He rebuilt his life, brick by brick, patient by patient, sunrise by sunrise. He learned to cook. He learned to braid hair. He learned that being a father was the hardest and most important surgery he would ever perform. And every single night, when Maya asked if he'd helped people, he told her yes. Because that was the truth. That was who he chose to be, not the victim, not the angry man screaming into the void. Just a father, just a doctor, just someone trying to do right in a world that often did wrong. It was 7:15 a.m. when Darius finally left the supply closet. He walked to the nurse's station. Maria was updating charts. "The patient from the MVA," he said. "Victoria Chen. What's her status?" Maria looked up. "Stable. ICU says vitals are improving. She hasn't regained consciousness yet, but the prognosis is good." She paused. "Darius, do you know her?" He didn't answer immediately. The question hung in the air like smoke. "I knew her," he finally said. "A long time ago." "Should I flag the file? Notify administration about a potential conflict?" Darius thought about it. By every ethical standard, he should report the connection. Let someone else handle her care going forward. Remove himself from the equation. But something stopped him. Some instinct he couldn't name. Some whisper from the part of his mind that had learned, over 7 years, that the universe didn't arrange coincidences without reason. "No," he said. "Don't flag it. I'll follow up myself." Maria frowned, but didn't argue. She trusted him. Everyone on the night shift trusted him. He'd earned it, one life at a time. Darius checked his watch. 7:18 a.m. His shift ended at 6, but the trauma had run long. Mrs. Patterson, his neighbor, was watching Maya. She'd get Maya ready for school. She always did when emergencies pushed his hours. He should go home. He should sleep. He should be there when Maya got home from school at 3:15, like he always was. Instead, he walked to the ICU. Victoria Chen lay in bed 4, surrounded by monitors and IV lines. Without her power suits and her conference room armor, she looked smaller than he remembered. Older, more human. Darius stood at the foot of her bed for a long time. He'd saved her life. The woman who had destroyed his. He'd spent 3 hours and 47 minutes keeping her heart beating, her blood flowing, her organs functioning. Why? Because it was his job. Because Maya was watching, even when she wasn't there. Because he refused to become the kind of man who let people die for the sake of old wounds. But also, and this part he didn't want to admit, even to himself, because the moment he'd seen her face on that table, he'd realized something. He wasn't angry anymore. Somewhere in the past 7 years, Between the sleepless nights and the endless patience and the small, perfect moments of watching his daughter grow up, he'd let go of the rage. He hadn't forgiven Victoria Chen. He didn't think he ever would. But the hatred that had once burned like acid in his chest had cooled into something else. Indifference, maybe. Or pity. Or just exhaustion. She'd taken his career, but he'd built a new one. She'd taken his reputation, but the people who mattered knew who he really was. She'd taken his future, or tried to, and instead he'd found a different future, one that mattered more than anything he'd imagined in his old life. Maya was his future now. Everything else was just noise. Darius turned to leave, but as he reached the door, he heard a sound, a soft moan, the rustle of sheets. He looked back. Victoria Chen's eyes were open. She was looking at him. And even through the fog of sedation and trauma, he saw the moment recognition flickered across her face. The confusion, the disbelief, the dawning understanding. She knew who he was. She tried to speak. Her lips moved, forming words that wouldn't quite come. Darius waited. "You," she whispered finally. Her voice was ruined, barely audible. You're the surgeon. From MedTech," Darius said quietly. "Yes." Her eyes widened. Fear flashed through them. The kind of primal fear that comes when you realize you're completely vulnerable in the presence of someone you've wronged. "You saved me?" "Yes." "Why?" Darius looked at her for a long moment. The woman who had destroyed his career. The woman who had covered up a defective device that had killed a good man. The woman who had looked at him in that conference room and calculated his expendability with the cold precision of a spreadsheet. "Because," he said slowly, "my daughter asks me every night if I helped people today. And I wanted to tell her the truth." He walked out of the room. Behind him, Victoria Chen stared at the ceiling, tears streaming silently down her face. 3 days passed before Victoria Chen was strong enough to speak more than a few words at a time. Darius knew this because he checked her chart every morning before leaving his shift. He told himself it was professional obligation. Follow-up on a critical patient. Standard procedure for any trauma surgeon. But that was a lie, and he knew it. He was watching her. Waiting. Though for what, he couldn't say. On the 4th day, he came home to find Maya sitting at the kitchen table, her homework spread out in front of her, her pencil tapping against her chin in that way she did when she was thinking hard. "Hey, baby girl." Darius dropped his bag by the door and kissed the top of her head. "How was school?" "Confusing." Maya didn't look up. "We learned about forgiveness today in social studies. Mrs. Brennan says forgiveness is when you stop being angry at someone who hurt you. But Jalen said forgiveness means you have to be nice to them again. And I said that doesn't make sense because what if they're still mean? And Mrs. Brennan said that's a complicated question, and we'd talk about it more tomorrow. But I want to know now." Darius pulled out a chair and sat down across from his daughter. She had that look in her eyes, the one that meant she wouldn't let this go until she had an answer that satisfied her. "What do you think forgiveness means?" he asked. Maya chewed her lip. I think forgiveness means you don't let the bad thing they did keep hurting you. Like, you put it down. You stop carrying it around." "That's pretty smart for an 8-year-old. "I'm advanced." She said it matter-of-factly, the way other kids might say the sky was blue. "But Dad, does forgiveness mean you have to help them? If someone was really, really mean to you, and then they needed help, would you have to help them?" Darius felt something tighten in his chest. "Why do you ask?" "Just wondering." Maya finally looked up at him. Her dark eyes were so much like his mother's that sometimes it hurt to look at them. "Would you?" He thought about Victoria Chen lying in the ICU, about the choice he'd made without really making it, about the 3 hours and 47 minutes when his hands had worked to save a woman his heart had every reason to hate. "Yes," he said quietly. "I would." "Even if they didn't say sorry?" "Even then." "Why?" Darius reached across the table and took his daughter's hand. "Because the kind of person I am doesn't depend on the kind of person they are. I get to choose who I want to be. And I choose to be someone who helps. Every time. No matter what." Maya considered this for a long moment. Then she nodded, apparently satisfied. "Okay. Can we have tacos for dinner?" Darius laughed. The sound surprised him. "Yeah, baby girl. We can have tacos." Later that night, after Maya was asleep, Darius sat alone in the living room. The house was quiet. The street outside was quiet. The whole world felt quiet, like it was holding its breath. He pulled out his phone and did something he hadn't done in 7 years. He searched for Victoria Chen. The results loaded instantly. CEO of MedTech Dynamics, Harvard MBA, Forbes 40 under 40 when she was 37, net worth estimated at $340 million, divorced, no children, board member of 6 different organizations, philanthropist, industry leader, pioneer. Not a single mention of Harold Washington, not a single mention of the VentureCare 3000 recall that had quietly happened 18 months after Darius lost his license. No fanfare, no press conference. Just a small notice buried in FDA filings that the device was being voluntarily withdrawn for design improvements. Darius wondered how many people had died before that withdrawal. How many Harold Washingtons? How many families shattered? How many surgeons blamed? He closed the browser and put down his phone. Some things were better left unresearched. Victoria Chen discharged herself from the hospital on day 6, against medical advice. Darius found out from Maria, who found out from the day shift nurses. "She had a whole team of people show up," Maria said during their shift change briefing. "Lawyers, assistants, some guy who looked like private security. They basically took over the floor for an hour. Administration was falling all over themselves."
Did she say anything? About what? About anything?
Maria gave him a strange look. "She asked for the name of the surgeon who operated on her. I told her it was you. She didn't react, just nodded and left." Darius processed this information in silence. He'd expected something, a confrontation maybe, a thank you, an accusation, some acknowledgement that their histories had collided in the most improbable way possible. Instead, nothing. She'd asked his name and left. Maybe that was fitting. Victoria Chen had always been good at treating people like they didn't matter. 3 more days passed. Darius fell back into his routine. Night shifts, morning homecoming, breakfast with Maya, sleep while she was at school, wake up in time to be there when she got home, homework, dinner, bedtime stories, then back to the hospital to do it all again. The rhythm of his life, the structure that held everything together. On day 9, the rhythm broke. Darius was reviewing lab results at the nurse's station when a woman appeared at the counter. Professional suit, expensive haircut. The kind of put-together appearance that didn't belong in a public hospital at 2 a.m. "Dr. Darius Cole?" Darius looked up. "Can I help you?" "My name is Rachel Morrison. I'm Victoria Chen's executive assistant." She placed a business card on the counter. "Ms. Chen would like to meet with you. At your convenience, of course." "I don't think that's appropriate." "Ms. Chen anticipated you might say that." Rachel Morrison's expression remained perfectly neutral. She asked me to tell you that she understands completely if you decline. But she also asked me to give you this. She placed an envelope next to the business card. Plain white, no markings. Darius stared at it like it might explode. What is it? I don't know. She sealed it herself. Rachel Morrison stepped back from the counter. My contact information is on the card. If you change your mind, call any time, day or night. She turned and walked away. Darius watched her go. The envelope sat on the counter, innocent and ominous at the same time. Maria appeared at his elbow. What was that about? Nothing. Darius picked up the envelope and stuffed it in his pocket. Just some administrative thing. But he felt the weight of it against his leg for the rest of his shift. A small rectangle of paper that somehow felt heavier than anything he'd ever carried. He opened it in his car at 6:47 a.m., parked in the hospital garage with the engine running and the heat on low. Inside was a single sheet of paper, handwritten. The penmanship was shaky, clearly written by someone still recovering from major surgery. Dr. Cole, I know who you are. I remember what happened 7 years ago. I remember what I did. For 7 years, I told myself it was business, that I was protecting the company, that one surgeon's career was an acceptable cost for maintaining institutional stability. I was wrong. I don't expect you to forgive me. I'm not sure I would in your position. But I need you to know that I know. I've always known. And I need to tell you something. Something that couldn't wait. Something that might change everything. Please, meet me. Victoria Chen. Darius read the letter 3 times. Then he folded it carefully and put it back in the envelope. He sat in his car for a long time, watching the sunrise paint the parking garage walls in shades of orange and gold. Finally, he pulled out his phone and dialed the number on the business card. Ms. Morrison, this is Dr. Cole. Tell Ms. Chen I'll meet her. Tomorrow evening. Somewhere public. Somewhere neutral. A pause. She suggested her office. No, somewhere neutral. A coffee shop, a restaurant, I don't care, but not her territory. Another pause. I'll arrange something and call you back within the hour. Fine. Darius hung up. His hands were steady, but his heart was racing. 7 years of careful distance. 7 years of building a new life. 7 years of choosing to move forward instead of looking back. And now, with a single letter, Victoria Chen had pulled him right back to the edge of everything he'd tried to escape. The meeting was set for 7 p.m. at a small Italian restaurant in Midtown. Neutral territory, public enough to feel safe, private enough for difficult conversations. Darius arrived 15 minutes early. Old habit. In the ER, being early meant being prepared. Being prepared meant being in control. Being in control meant saving lives. He wasn't sure any of that applied here, but the habit remained. Victoria Chen arrived exactly on time. She moved slowly, carefully, still healing from the surgery. Her face was pale, and there were shadows under her eyes that makeup couldn't hide. But her posture was straight, and her expression was composed. She slid into the booth across from him. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The restaurant noise filled the silence. Clinking glasses, murmured conversations, the distant sounds of a kitchen at work. "Thank you for coming," Victoria said finally. "You said you had something to tell me. Something that couldn't wait." "I do." She folded her hands on the table. Darius noticed they were trembling slightly. "But first, I need to say something else. Something I should have said 7 years ago." "I'm not interested in apologies." "I know, but I'm going to say it anyway. She met his eyes. What I did to you was wrong. Not just professionally wrong, morally wrong. I knew the device was defective. I knew Harold Washington's death wasn't your fault. And I chose to protect the company instead of telling the truth. Why? Because I was scared. The admission seemed to cost her something. I'd spent 15 years building medtech. It was everything I had, my whole identity, my whole life. And I convinced myself that one person's career was worth sacrificing to keep it all from falling apart. One person's career, one man's death. What about the other patients with that device? Victoria's jaw tightened. I know what I did. 14 more people died before we finally pulled it. 14 families destroyed. 14 deaths that I could have prevented if I'd been braver, better, less afraid. Darius felt the old anger stirring, the familiar heat that had once burned so bright. But it felt distant now, muted, like an echo of something that used to matter. You wanted to tell me something, he said flatly. Tell me. Victoria took a deep breath. 9 days ago, when I had my accident, I wasn't just driving home from work. I was fleeing. Fleeing what? Someone's trying to kill me. The words hung in the air. Darius stared at her, waiting for a punchline that didn't come. I know how that sounds, Victoria continued. Paranoid, dramatic. But I've been sick for 3 months. Mysterious symptoms, fatigue, nausea, cognitive issues. My doctors couldn't figure it out. They ran every test. Everything came back normal. What does that have to do with your accident? The night of the crash, I found out what was causing it. Victoria's voice dropped. I was being poisoned, slowly, carefully, by someone I trusted. Darius leaned back in his chair. Who? My chief operating officer, Daniel Reeves. He's been my right hand for 6 years. I trusted him with everything. And he's been feeding me a drug compound that mimics neurological deterioration. If I hadn't crashed my car and ended up on your operating table, I'd probably be dead within another month. How did you find out? I had a private investigator looking into something unrelated. Corporate espionage at MedTech. Someone was leaking proprietary data. The trail led back to Daniel. Victoria's hands tightened on the table. When I confronted him that night, he admitted everything. The poisoning, the data leaks, all of it. He's been positioning himself to take over the company, force me out, make it look like I was losing my mental faculties. Why are you telling me this? Because you're the only person I trust. Darius laughed. The sound was harsh, brittle. You destroyed my career. You ruined my reputation. And now you trust me? Yes. Victoria's eyes were steady. Because you saved my life when you had every reason to let me die. Because you did the right thing, even when it cost you everything. Because you're the kind of man who tells his daughter the truth every single night, even when the truth is hard. Something cold settled in Darius's stomach. How do you know about my daughter? I did my research, after the hospital. I wanted to understand who you'd become. Victoria paused. I know about Maya. I know about the overnight shifts. I know about the 6:15 rule. I know you've built a whole new life from the ashes of the one I burned. That's not trust, that's surveillance. No, it's recognition. Victoria leaned forward. 7 years ago, I saw you in that conference room, and I saw a problem to be managed, a variable to be eliminated. I didn't see a person. I didn't see a father. I didn't see a man who would rebuild himself from nothing and somehow become more than he was before. What do you want from me? Help. The word came out raw. Daniel knows I survived. He knows I know what he did. And he has resources, connections, money, people inside MedTech who are loyal to him. I can't go to the police. Half of them are probably on his payroll. I can't go to my board. Half of them are probably in on it. Go to the FBI. I need evidence first. Concrete evidence. Otherwise, it's just my word against his. And right now, he spent 3 months making me look unstable. Victoria's voice cracked slightly. I'm running out of options. And running out of time. Darius studied her face, looking for the lie, looking for the manipulation he'd learned to expect from her 7 years ago. But all he saw was fear. Real, genuine, undisguised fear. Why me? He asked quietly. Out of everyone in the world, why come to me? Because you're the only person who has no reason to help me, which means if you do help me, I'll know it's real. Victoria's eyes glistened. And because I owe you a debt I can never repay. This is my chance to try. Darius thought about Maya, about the life he'd built, about the peace he'd finally found. And then he thought about Harold Washington. 14 more patients. Families shattered. Deaths that could have been prevented. Victoria Chen had done terrible things. She'd hurt people. She'd covered up crimes. She'd chosen profit over lives. But she was also a human being. A human being in danger. A human being asking for help. And Darius Cole had told his daughter every single night that he was the kind of man who helped people. I'm not saying yes, he said slowly, but I'm not saying no. Not yet. Victoria exhaled. Relief flooded her face. Tell me everything, Darius continued, from the beginning. And if I think you're lying to me, about anything, I walk. No second chances. Understood. And Victoria? Darius waited until she met his eyes. If you're using me again, if this is some kind of game, I won't be the naive surgeon you railroaded 7 years ago. I've learned things since then. I've become someone different. Someone you don't want as an enemy. Victoria nodded slowly. I believe you. Good. Darius settled back in his chair. Now start talking. She talked for 2 hours. Names, dates, transactions, symptoms, discoveries. A web of betrayal that stretched back years, with threads leading to places Darius couldn't have imagined. By the time she finished, the restaurant was nearly empty. Their coffee had gone cold, and Darius's understanding of his own situation had shifted fundamentally. He wasn't just being asked to help a former enemy. He was being asked to uncover a conspiracy that might have roots deeper than either of them understood. And somewhere in the back of his mind, a voice that sounded suspiciously like his daughter whispered, Did you help someone today, Daddy? Darius looked at Victoria Chen, the woman who had destroyed his old life, the woman whose life he had saved, the woman who might be the key to exposing something much larger than either of them. I need to think about this, he said finally. I'll call you tomorrow. Thank you. Victoria reached across the table like she wanted to touch his hand, then thought better of it. Whatever you decide, thank you for listening. Darius stood up, dropped enough cash on the table to cover both their checks. One more thing, he said. My daughter, you keep her out of this. Whatever happens, whoever comes for you, Maya stays out of it. Non-negotiable. I understand. Do you? Because if anything happens to her because of this, Victoria, there isn't a hole deep enough for you to hide in. Victoria met his gaze without flinching. I understand, Darius. Completely. He nodded once and walked out of the restaurant. The night air was cold against his face, The street was quiet. And Darius Cole, who had spent 7 years learning to want nothing but peace, felt the old instincts awakening. Something was coming. Something bigger than old grudges and corporate politics. And somehow, impossibly, he was right in the middle of it. Darius didn't sleep that night. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the old house settle around him. Maya was asleep down the hall, her door cracked open the way she liked it, the nightlight casting a soft glow into the corridor. His daughter. His whole world. The reason he'd walked away from everything else. And now Victoria Chen was asking him to walk back toward danger. At 5:47 a.m., his phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "I forgot to mention. Daniel knows about you. He knows you operated on me. He's already started asking questions about who you are. Please be careful." Darius read the message 3 times. Then he deleted it. He made breakfast for Maya at 6:30. Scrambled eggs, toast, orange juice. The same breakfast he'd made 1,000 times before. The routine that kept everything stable. "Dad, you look tired." Maya studied him across the table with those sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Did you have a hard night at work?" "Just a long one, baby girl." "Was it a bad accident?" "There are no bad accidents, just situations that need help." Maya nodded thoughtfully. "Mrs. Patterson says you're a hero. She says you save people's lives every night." "Mrs. Patterson is very kind." "Are you a hero, Dad?" Darius set down his coffee cup. "I'm just a person who does his job, Maya. Heroes are in comic books. Real people just do what needs to be done, one day at a time." "That sounds like something a hero would say." He laughed, despite himself. "Eat your eggs before they get cold." After dropping Maya at school, Darius sat in his car in the parking lot for a long time. Watching other parents come and go. Watching children. Darius arrived first, ordered a black coffee he didn't intend to drink, and chose a table in the back corner where he could see both exits. Victoria arrived 12 minutes later. She looked better than she had at the restaurant. Color returning to her face. Movement less careful. But there was something in her eyes that hadn't been there before. Something hunted. She slid into the seat across from him. "Thank you for coming." "I haven't agreed to anything yet." "I know." Victoria placed a small flash drive on the table between them. "But I thought this might help you decide." Darius looked at the drive, but didn't touch it. "What is it?" "Everything I've been able to gather on Daniel. Financial records, internal communications, shipping manifests for the compound he's been using to poison me. It's not enough for a prosecution, but it's enough to prove I'm not imagining things." "How did you get it?" "I still have a few people inside MedTech who are loyal to me. Not many, but a few." Victoria's voice dropped. "Daniel has been careful, Darius, very careful. He spent years building this. The poisoning was just the final phase. Before that, he was systematically isolating me, turning board members against me, questioning my decisions in meetings, planting seeds of doubt about my mental fitness." "Classic corporate coup." "Yes, but with a lethal twist." Victoria leaned forward. "He wants me dead, Darius. Not just out of power. Dead. Because I know too much. About MedTech. About decisions the company has made. About where the bodies are buried." Darius felt his jaw tighten. "Like the Ventricare 3000. Victoria met his eyes. "Yes, like that." "You covered up a defective device that killed people, and now you're surprised someone else at your company is willing to kill?" "I'm not surprised. I'm terrified." Victoria's composure cracked slightly. "Because Daniel knows things too. Things I did. And if he goes down, He'll take me with him.
He'll take the whole company down. And the people who will suffer most won't be executives like me. They'll be the thousands of employees who had nothing to do with any of it. That sounds like a convenient excuse to protect yourself. Maybe it is. Victoria didn't flinch from the accusation. But it's also true. MedTech employs 11,000 people, Darius. 11,000 families depending on those paychecks. If this blows up the wrong way, they all lose everything. Darius picked up the flash drive, turned it over in his fingers. Such a small thing to contain so much potential destruction. "What exactly do you want from me?" he asked, specifically. "I need someone on the outside. Someone Daniel doesn't control. Someone who can verify what I've found and help me figure out how to bring him down without destroying everything else in the process." "Why not a lawyer, a private investigator?" "I've tried. Daniel has connections everywhere. The last investigator I hired ended up on his payroll within 2 weeks." Victoria's hands tightened on the table. "But you're different. You have nothing to gain from betraying me. You have every reason to hate me, which means if you help me, I can actually trust it." "That's a strange kind of logic." "Strange times require strange logic." Darius looked at the flash drive again, at Victoria's face, at the fear she was trying so hard to hide behind corporate composure. "If I do this," he said slowly, "there are conditions." "Name them." "First, my daughter stays completely out of this. No surveillance, no protection details showing up at her school, nothing that puts her on anyone's radar." "Done." "Second, I work on my own timeline. I have a job. I have responsibilities. I'm not dropping everything to solve your problems." "Understood." "Third, if I find evidence that you've lied to me about anything at all, I walk, and I take everything I've learned straight to the FBI. Consequences be damned." Victoria nodded slowly. "Fair." "And fourth," Darius held her gaze, "when this is over, regardless of how it turns out, you're going to tell the truth about what happened to me 7 years ago. Publicly. On the record. Full accountability." Victoria's face went pale. "Darius, that could destroy my reputation, my career." "Good. The board would force me out. The shareholders would—" "You came to me because you said you owed me a debt you could never repay." Darius's voice was quiet, but steel hard. "This is the price. Take it or leave it." A long silence stretched between them. Outside, cars passed. People walked by, living their ordinary lives, unaware of the extraordinary conversation happening inside. Finally, Victoria spoke. "Okay." "Okay what?" "Okay, I agree. All 4 conditions." She extended her hand across the table. "When this is over, I'll tell the truth. About all of it. Whatever it costs me." Darius looked at her hand. The hand that had signed documents that destroyed his life. The hand that had shaken deals that killed patients. The hand that was now asking for his help. He took it. "We have an agreement." Victoria exhaled sharply. Relief flooded her face, mixed with something else. Something that looked almost like gratitude. "Where do we start?" she asked. Darius pocketed the flash drive. "We start with understanding exactly what Daniel Reeves wants. Not just power, not just money. What he really wants. Because people who go this far always have a deeper reason." "How do we find that out?" "By doing what I do in the ER." Darius stood up. "We follow the blood." The next 3 weeks changed everything. Darius worked his shifts at the hospital. He came home to Maya. He maintained every appearance of his normal life. But in the margins, the early morning hours before Maya woke up, the late night hours after she fell asleep,
He dove into the contents of Victoria's flash drive. What he found was worse than he'd expected. Daniel Reeves wasn't just trying to take over medtech. He was trying to strip it for parts. Hidden shell companies, offshore accounts, licensing deals that would transfer critical patents to foreign competitors. A systematic plan to hollow out the company from the inside, extract billions in value, and leave 11,000 employees with nothing but bankruptcy and broken promises. But the deeper Darius dug, the more he found something else, something personal. Daniel Reeves had a brother. Thomas Reeves died 8 years ago from complications following cardiac surgery. The surgeon had used an experimental device, a precursor to the Ventricare 3000. The surgery failed. Thomas died on the operating table. The surgeon's name was never released publicly, but buried in MedTech's confidential personnel files was a notation. Attending physician consulted on case. Dr. Darius Cole. Darius remembered the surgery. He'd been called in as a consultant, not the primary surgeon. He'd recommended against using the experimental device. The primary surgeon had overruled him. Thomas Reeves had died. And now, 8 years later, Thomas Reeves' brother was systematically destroying the company that had built the device that killed him. And he'd discovered, presumably, that the woman who'd covered up the device's failures was the same woman who'd been in charge when his brother died. This wasn't just corporate greed. This was revenge. Darius called Victoria at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday night. Maya was asleep. The house was quiet. His voice was steady, but his heart was pounding. Daniel's brother died in a surgery 8 years ago. The device was a medtech prototype. I was consulted on the case. Silence on the other end. Victoria? I didn't know. Her voice was barely audible. I didn't know about his brother. But you knew about the device. You knew it had problems, and you covered it up. Just like you covered up the Ventricare 3000. Darius, how many devices, Victoria? How many experimental products did MedTech push through without adequate testing? How many people died while you protected your company's reputation? I don't know. The words came out broken. I don't know the exact number. I stopped counting years ago. You stopped counting. Darius felt the old anger rising, hot and bitter. You stopped counting human lives. I know what I did. I know who I was, Victoria's voice cracked. Do you think I don't live with that every single day? Do you think I don't see their faces when I close my eyes? I think you saw dollar signs when you closed your eyes. I think you saw stock prices and board meetings and your precious career. You're right. No defense, no excuse, just admission. You're absolutely right. That's who I was. That's what I chose. And I have to live with that for the rest of my life. So does Daniel Reeves, except he decided not to live with it. He decided to do something about it. By killing me? By making you suffer the way his brother suffered. The way he's suffered for 8 years, watching you succeed while Thomas rotted in a grave. Victoria was silent for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was different, smaller, younger. What do I do, Darius? How do I fix something this broken? I don't know if you can fix it, but you can stop it from getting worse. Darius rubbed his eyes. Daniel's plan isn't just about revenge on you. It's about destroying MedTech entirely. Every employee, every patient who depends on your devices, every family connected to your company. He wants to burn it all down. Can we stop him? Maybe. But not by hiding. Not by playing defense. Darius made a decision he hadn't known he was going to make. You need to get ahead of this. Go public before he does. Go public with what? Everything. The device failures, the cover-ups, my case, all of it. Release it yourself, on your terms, with a full plan for accountability and compensation to affected families. That would destroy me. Maybe. Or maybe it saves 11,000 jobs and gives Daniel nothing left to expose. You take away his leverage by taking away his secrets. The board would never... The board doesn't know what Daniel is planning. Show them. Show them what happens if they let this play out on his timeline instead of yours. Victoria laughed bitterly. You want me to commit corporate suicide to save my company? I want you to do the right thing for once in your life. I want you to be the person you should have been 7 years ago, 8 years ago, every year since you decided that profit mattered more than people. The silence stretched so long that Darius thought the call had dropped. Then Victoria spoke. Just 2 words. Quiet. Certain. Okay. Tomorrow. Tomorrow what? Tomorrow I call a board meeting. Tomorrow I tell them everything. Tomorrow I become the person I should have been. She paused. Will you be there? Why would I be there? Because you're the proof, Darius. You're the surgeon who got destroyed for telling the truth. You're the evidence that what I'm saying is real. Her voice steadied. And because I think I'm going to need someone in that room who knows what the right thing looks like. Someone who can remind me why I'm doing this when it gets hard. Darius thought about Maya, about the question she asked every night, about the answer he wanted to give her. What time? 10 a.m., MedTech headquarters, conference room A. I'll be there. He hung up the phone and sat in the darkness for a long time. Tomorrow, he would walk into the building where his career had ended. Tomorrow, he would face the people who had destroyed him. Tomorrow, everything would change. But tonight, he checked on Maya one more time, watched her sleep, listened to her breathe, and reminded himself why any of it mattered. At 9:47 a.m. the next morning, Darius Cole walked through the front doors of MedTech headquarters for the first time in 7 years. Security buzzed him through without recognition. The lobby looked exactly as he remembered. The same corporate art on the walls, the same hushed efficiency, the same smell of expensive coffee and ambition. He took the elevator to the 14th floor, conference room A. The same room where Victoria Chen had ended his career with carefully chosen words and calculated silence. Victoria was waiting outside the door. She looked different today. No makeup to hide the strain. No corporate armor to deflect scrutiny. Just a woman facing the consequences of a lifetime of choices. "Thank you for coming," she said. "Don't thank me yet. This could all go very wrong." "I know." She managed a small smile. "But at least it will be the truth. That has to count for something." It counts for everything. They walked into the conference room together. 12 faces turned toward them. Board members, executives, lawyers. The power structure of MedTech assembled in one place. And in the corner, watching with cold eyes, sat Daniel Reeves. He looked at Darius without recognition at first. Then understanding dawned. His expression shifted, hardened. "What is he doing here?" Daniel's voice cut through the murmurs. "This is a closed meeting." "He's here because I invited him." Victoria moved to the head of the table. "Dr. Darius Cole, former chief of cardiac surgery at MedTech Memorial. Some of you may remember him. 7 years ago, this company destroyed his career to cover up a device failure that killed a patient. Today, I'm going to tell you the truth about that, and about everything else I've hidden." The room went absolutely silent. Daniel Reeves stood up slowly. "Victoria, you're clearly still recovering from your accident. Perhaps we should postpone this meeting until you're feeling better." "I'm feeling fine, Daniel." Victoria's voice was steady. "Better than I've felt in months, actually. Probably because I stopped ingesting the compound you've been putting in my coffee." The color drained from Daniel's face. That's ridiculous. I don't know what you're... I have the lab results. I have the shipping records. I have documented testimony from 3 employees who watched you access my private office when I wasn't there. Victoria pulled a folder from her briefcase. Would you like me to continue? Or would you like to sit down and listen while I tell this board exactly what you've been planning? Daniel's eyes darted to the door. 2 security guards had positioned themselves there. Victoria's security guards, Darius realized. She'd prepared for this. Slowly, Daniel sat back down. His face was a mask of barely controlled fury. Victoria turned to the board. Gentlemen, ladies, what you're about to hear will be difficult. Some of you may have suspected pieces of it. Some of you may have chosen not to look too closely. But today, we're going to look at all of it, together. And then we're going to decide what kind of company MedTech is going to be. She opened her folder, and Darius Cole, standing in the room where his old life had ended, watched the first steps of something new begin to take shape. Victoria spoke for 47 minutes without interruption. She started with the Ventricare 3000, the internal reports that had shown problems during testing. The decision to proceed anyway, because the launch deadline coincided with a major investor meeting. The 14 patients who died before the quiet recall. The families who were paid settlements in exchange for silence. The surgeons, like Darius, who were blamed to deflect attention from the device. Then she moved backward. The experimental cardiac device that had killed Thomas Reeves 8 years ago. The pattern of rushing products to market before adequate testing. The culture she had built, deliberately or not, where bad news was buried and whistleblowers were eliminated. She named names. She produced documents. She laid out the timeline of her own complicity with the clinical precision of a surgeon opening a patient's chest. The board members sat in stunned silence. Some of them had known pieces of this story. A few had suspected more. But hearing it spoken aloud, documented, and undeniable, transformed suspicion into something they could no longer ignore. Daniel Reeves watched it all with an expression that shifted between fury and calculation. Darius could see him thinking, adjusting, looking for angles. This was a man who had spent years planning his revenge. He wouldn't surrender easily. When Victoria finished, she closed her folder and looked around the table. I've given you the truth. Now I'm asking this board to decide how we respond. We can continue hiding. We can wait for Daniel to expose everything on his timeline, in his way, designed to maximize damage. Or we can get ahead of this. Issue a full public disclosure. Establish a compensation fund for affected families. Implement new safety protocols with independent oversight. Show the world that MedTech is capable of accountability. Robert Huang, the board chairman, found his voice first. Victoria, what you're proposing would cost billions. It could destroy the company. The company is already being destroyed. Victoria pointed at Daniel. He's been systematically positioning us for a hostile takeover. Shell companies, patent transfers, corrupted board members. By this time next year, MedTech wouldn't exist anyway. At least my way, we control the narrative. We have a chance to survive. This is insane, Daniel finally spoke, his voice tight with controlled rage. Victoria is clearly suffering from paranoia, probably a result of her accident. She's making wild accusations without any real evidence. I have the evidence, Daniel. Victoria's voice was calm. Lab results from 3 independent facilities confirming the compound in my system. Security footage of you accessing my office. Financial records linking you to offshore accounts that have been receiving MedTech funds for 18 months. Fabricated. All of it. Then you won't mind if the FBI reviews everything. The room went very quiet. Daniel's eyes flickered, just for a moment. But Darius caught it. The calculation. The fear. Victoria, let's not be hasty. Daniel's tone shifted, smoother now, conciliatory. Obviously, there have been some misunderstandings. If you have concerns about certain financial arrangements, I'm happy to explain them. There's no need to involve federal authorities. Misunderstandings? Victoria laughed bitterly. You've been poisoning me for 3 months, Daniel. You've been planning to steal this company for years. And you did it all because of Thomas. The name landed like a physical blow. Daniel's composure cracked. Don't you dare say his name. His voice dropped to something low and dangerous. Don't you dare. I'm sorry about your brother. I mean that. What happened to him was a tragedy that this company caused. Victoria's voice softened. But killing me won't bring him back. Destroying MedTech won't bring him back. Nothing will. You covered it up. Daniel stood slowly, his hands gripping the edge of the table. He died on an operating table, and you covered it up. You paid off his doctors. You buried the reports. You let the device that killed him stay on the market for another 2 years. I know. My mother died 6 months later. Did you know that? Heart attack. The doctor said it was natural causes, but I know better. She died of grief, because her son was dead and no one would tell her why. Daniel. So yes, Victoria. Daniel's voice rose. Yes, I've been planning this. For 8 years, I've been planning this. I joined your company. I earned your trust. I made myself indispensable, all so I could watch you lose everything the way I lost everything. And the poisoning? You were supposed to go slowly, lose your mind bit by bit, watch your empire crumble while you couldn't even remember your own name. Daniel's eyes burned. That's what you deserved. That's justice. That's murder. It's balance. Daniel turned to the board. None of you are innocent either. You all knew. Maybe not everything, but enough. You chose profits over patience every single time. You're all complicit in everything she just confessed to. Robert Huang shifted uncomfortably. Daniel, I think you should sit down. Why? Because I'm telling the truth? Daniel laughed harshly. Victoria isn't the hero here. She's not confessing out of conscience. She's confessing because I backed her into a corner and she's trying to save herself. You're right. Everyone turned to look at Darius. He'd been silent throughout the meeting, standing against the wall, watching. Now he stepped forward. She is trying to save herself. That's true. Darius met Daniel's eyes. But she's also trying to do something she should have done years ago. That counts for something. Who the hell are you to judge? Daniel's fury redirected toward Darius. She destroyed your career. She blamed you for a death that wasn't your fault. You should be helping me tear her down, not defending her. I'm not defending her. I'm trying to stop more people from getting hurt. Darius kept his voice level. You want justice for your brother. I understand that. I wanted justice too, for 7 years. But this isn't justice, Daniel. This is destruction. You're not going to hurt Victoria. You're going to hurt 11,000 employees who had nothing to do with what happened to Thomas. Collateral damage. Those are people's lives, families, children. Darius thought of Maya. You become exactly what you're fighting against when you stop caring about them. Don't lecture me about caring, Daniel's voice cracked. I held my brother's hand while he died. I watched my mother waste away. I cared more than anyone in this room has ever cared about anything. Then prove it. Darius took another step forward. You have information that could hold this company accountable. Real accountability. Legal accountability. You could help the families of everyone who died get the justice they deserve. Real justice, not this slow murder and corporate destruction. That doesn't help anyone. It helps me. Does it? Darius asked quietly. When this is over, when Victoria is dead and MedTech is ashes, does Thomas come back? Does your mother? Does anything actually get better? Daniel's face contorted. For a moment he looked less like a calculating corporate killer and more like what he actually was. A man broken by grief, lashing out at a world that had taken everything from him. "I don't know how to stop," he whispered. The room held its breath. "Then let us help you." Victoria stood slowly. "Daniel, I can't undo what happened. I can't bring Thomas back. But I can make sure it never happens again. I can make sure the truth comes out. Every family, every patient, full disclosure, full accountability. That's something, isn't it? That's more than revenge gives you." Daniel looked at her, really looked at her, and Darius saw something shift in his expression. The rage was still there, burning bright, but beneath it, exhaustion. 8 years of hatred had worn him down to nothing. "You'll go to prison," Daniel said flatly. "If the full truth comes out, you'll face criminal charges." "Probably." "And you're willing to do that?" Victoria glanced at Darius. Something passed between them, an acknowledgement of debts owed and prices paid. "I'm tired of hiding," she said finally. "I'm tired of being the person I had to become to protect all these secrets. If prison is the cost of finally telling the truth, then yes, I'm willing to do that." Daniel stood motionless for a long moment. The entire board watched him, barely breathing, waiting to see which way he would fall. Then his shoulders sagged, just slightly. The posture of a man setting down a weight he'd carried for far too long. "I want immunity," he said quietly. "Full cooperation in exchange for no prosecution for the poisoning." "That's not my call," Victoria replied. "That's the FBI's decision. But you could advocate for it." "I could," Victoria nodded slowly. "And I will, if you give us everything. Every document, every shell company, every name of everyone involved in the cover-ups over the years. That includes you." "I know." Daniel closed his eyes. When he opened them again, something had changed. The fire was still there, but banked now, contained. "Thomas was 29, he said. "Did you know that? 29 years old. He was going to be a father. His wife was 3 months pregnant when he died." His voice broke slightly. "She lost the baby 2 months later. Stress, the doctors said. So I lost a brother and a nephew in the same year, because of a device that never should have been approved." "I'm sorry." Victoria's voice was barely audible. "I'm so sorry." "Those words don't mean anything." "I know, but they're all I have." Daniel reached into his jacket pocket. For one terrible moment, Darius thought he was reaching for a weapon. Several board members flinched, but Daniel pulled out a flash drive. Small, black, ordinary looking. "Everything," he said. 8 years of documentation, every cover-up, every bribe, every death that was attributed to complications instead of device failure. It's all there." He set the drive on the table and pushed it toward Victoria. "Make it count," he said. "Make Thomas's death count for something." Victoria picked up the drive with trembling hands. "I will." The board meeting dissolved into chaos after that. Lawyers were called. The FBI was contacted. Daniel was escorted to a separate room to begin giving his statement. Board members argued about liability and disclosure and damage control. Darius slipped out during the confusion. He'd done what he came to do. The rest wasn't his fight. He was halfway to the elevator when Victoria caught up with him. "Darius, wait!" He stopped but didn't turn around. "Thank you," she said. "What you said in there, about justice and caring about people. That's what reached him. That's what made him stop. He stopped because he was tired. 8 years of hatred is exhausting. Maybe, but you gave him permission to stop. That matters. Darius finally turned. Victoria looked smaller than he'd ever seen her. The armor stripped away. The calculations abandoned. Just a woman facing the consequences of everything she'd done. "What happens now?" he asked. "I meet with the FBI. I start unwinding everything. And then?" She shrugged. "Whatever the legal system decides. I'm done running from it." "And the public disclosure?" "Tomorrow. Press conference at 9 a.m. Full transparency." Victoria managed a wan smile. "You could be there, if you want. Watch me finally tell the truth about what happened to you." "No." Darius shook his head. "I don't need to be there for that. I know the truth. That's enough." "Don't you want vindication? Don't you want the world to know you were innocent?" Darius thought about it. 7 years ago, he would have given anything for public vindication. To have his name cleared, his reputation restored, his career returned. But 7 years had changed him. Maya had changed him. The life he'd built from the ashes of the old one had changed him. "I don't need the world to know," he said finally. "I just need my daughter to know. And she already does." Victoria's eyes glistened. "You're a better person than I am, Darius Cole." "No, I'm just a person who figured out what actually matters." He pressed the elevator button. "Good luck with the press conference, and the FBI, and everything else." "Darius?" He looked back one more time. "The job offer," Victoria said. "Medical oversight, safety protocols. It's still open if you ever change your mind." The elevator doors opened. Darius stepped inside. "I won't," he said. "I've got everything I need." The doors closed between them. He made it home by 3:12 p.m., 3 minutes before Maya's school bus arrived. Mrs. Patterson waved from her window as Darius walked up the driveway. The bus pulled up at exactly 3:15. Maya bounced down the steps, her backpack too big for her small frame, her face lighting up when she saw him. "Dad!" She ran into his arms, and Darius held her tight, breathed in the smell of her hair, felt the solid warmth of her against his chest. "How was school, baby girl?" "Amazing! We learned about butterflies. Did you know they can taste with their feet? That's so weird. Also, I got 100 on my spelling test. Also, Tommy Hernandez said butterflies are boring, and I told him he was boring. And Mrs. Brennan made me apologize, but I didn't mean it." Darius laughed. "Let's go inside. I'll make you a snack and you can tell me more about the butterflies." "And the spelling test?" "And the spelling test." They walked into the house together, Maya chattering about her day, Darius listening to every word. The weight of the morning, the boardroom, the revelations and reckonings faded with each step. This was his life now. This was what mattered. Later that night, after dinner and homework and bath time and 3 chapters of the book they were reading together, Darius tucked Maya into bed. "Dad?" "Yeah, baby girl." "Did you help someone today?" Darius smoothed the hair back from her forehead. He thought about Victoria Chen, finally facing her truth. About Daniel Reeves, laying down his burden of hatred. About the families who would finally learn what really happened to their loved ones. "Yeah," he said softly. "I think I did." "Good." Maya smiled sleepily. "That's what heroes do." "I'm not a hero, remember? I'm just a person who does what needs to be done." "Same thing," Maya mumbled, her eyes already closing. "Love you, Dad." "Love you too, baby girl." He turned off the light and stood in the doorway for a long moment, watching her sleep. His daughter. His whole world. The reason every choice he'd made in the past 7 years had been the right one. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Press conference scheduled for 9 a.m. tomorrow. Full disclosure. Your name will be cleared publicly. I know you said you didn't need it, but you deserve it. Thank you for everything. Victoria. Darius read the message. Then he put his phone away without responding. Tomorrow, the world would learn the truth. Tomorrow, 7 years of injustice would finally be acknowledged. Tomorrow, everything would change for MedTech, for Victoria, for the families who had suffered in silence. But tonight, Darius Cole was exactly where he needed to be. Home, with his daughter, at peace. And that was worth more than any vindication the world could offer. The press conference made national news. Darius watched it from the break room at the hospital, standing in the back while nurses and orderlies gathered around the small television mounted on the wall. Victoria Chen stood at a podium, bristling with microphones, cameras flashing, reporters shouting questions she couldn't possibly answer all at once. She looked calm, composed, nothing like the frightened woman who had asked for his help 3 weeks ago. MedTech Dynamics has failed the patients who trusted us, Victoria said, her voice steady. For years, we prioritized profit over safety. We silenced whistleblowers. We blamed innocent doctors for device failures that were our responsibility. Today, I am releasing full documentation of every cover-up, every suppressed report, every family that deserved answers and received only silence. The reporters erupted. Questions overlapped into incomprehensible noise. Victoria raised her hand. The room quieted. I want to specifically address the case of Dr. Darius Cole. 7 years ago, Dr. Cole was a brilliant cardiac surgeon at MedTech Memorial Hospital. When one of our devices failed and killed a patient, Dr. Cole correctly identified the problem. He tried to warn us. Instead of listening, we destroyed his career to protect our stock price. Maria appeared at Darius's elbow. That's you she's talking about. I know. Darius, why didn't you ever tell anyone? What would have been the point? On the television, Victoria continued. Dr. Cole lost his surgical privileges, his reputation, and his future because he told the truth. MedTech owes him a debt that can never be fully repaid. Today, I am publicly acknowledging that Dr. Darius Cole was innocent of any wrongdoing. He was a hero who was punished for heroism, and I am personally responsible for that injustice. The break room had gone silent. Everyone was looking at Darius now. He kept his eyes on the screen. In the coming weeks, I will be cooperating fully with federal investigators. I expect to face criminal charges for my role in these cover-ups. I accept those consequences. MedTech will be establishing a compensation fund for all affected families, and we are implementing new safety protocols with independent oversight to ensure nothing like this ever happens again. A reporter managed to shout above the others. Ms. Chen, will you be stepping down as CEO? Yes, effective immediately. The board will appoint an interim leader while the company undergoes restructuring. Victoria paused. I want to close by saying something directly to the families who lost loved ones because of our failures. I'm sorry. Those words are inadequate. I know that. But I need you to hear them. I'm sorry for your loss. I'm sorry for our lies. And I'm sorry it took me so long to find the courage to tell the truth. She stepped back from the podium. The cameras kept flashing. The questions kept coming. But Victoria was done talking. Darius turned and walked out of the break room. The next few days were strange. His phone rang constantly. Reporters, news producers, documentary makers, book agents. Everyone wanted the story of Dr. Darius Cole, the surgeon who was destroyed for telling the truth and rebuilt his life from nothing. He didn't answer any of them. The hospital administration called him into a meeting. They offered him his old position back, Chief of Cardiac Surgery, full reinstatement, a formal apology. Darius thanked them politely and declined. "Dr. Cole, I don't understand." The hospital director looked genuinely confused. "This is everything you lost. We're giving it back." "I appreciate that. I really do. But I have a life now. A daughter who needs me home every night. A job that lets me be there for her." Darius smiled slightly. "I'm not the same person I was 7 years ago. That surgeon wanted to change the world. This one just wants to be a good father." "At least consider it. Take some time." "I don't need time. I know what I want." Darius stood up. "But thank you for the apology. That means more than you know." He walked out of the meeting and went back to work. 2 weeks later, Victoria Chen was indicted on 12 counts of fraud, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy. She surrendered to federal authorities without resistance. Bail was set at $5 million. Darius found out from the evening news, watching with Maya while she ate her dinner. "Dad, who's that lady?" "Someone I used to know." "Did she do something bad?" "Yes, but she's trying to make it right now." Maya considered this with the serious expression she got when processing complicated information. "Mrs. Brennan says making it right doesn't erase doing it wrong, but it's still important." Mrs. Brennan is a wise woman. "She's okay." Maya shrugged. "Can we have ice cream after dinner?" "If you finish your vegetables." "All of them?" "All of them." Maya sighed dramatically, but started eating her broccoli. Darius watched her for a moment, grateful for the simple normalcy of it. Bad guys on TV, vegetables on plates, ice cream as a reward for doing things you didn't want to do. This was the life he'd built. This was what mattered. The trial took 18 months. Victoria Chen pleaded guilty to 7 of the 12 charges. Her cooperation with federal investigators, combined with her full public disclosure, resulted in a reduced sentence. 8 years in federal prison. Eligibility for parole after 5. Daniel Reeves received immunity in exchange for his testimony. The poisoning charges were dropped. He disappeared from public life after the trial, and Darius never heard what happened to him. MedTech survived, barely. The compensation fund paid out over $2 billion to affected families. The company was restructured under new leadership, with strict safety protocols and independent oversight. It would never be what it was, but it would continue to exist. 11,000 employees kept their jobs. Harold Washington's family received a personal visit from the new CEO, along with a formal apology and the largest individual settlement in the fund. His grandchildren finally got the treehouse he'd been building. The family finished it themselves in his memory. Darius learned about all of this from news reports and occasional updates from Maria, who followed the case obsessively. He didn't seek out information. He didn't attend the trial. He didn't watch Victoria Chen's sentencing. He had other things to focus on. Maya turned 9, then 10, then 11. She grew taller, smarter, more opinionated. She developed passionate interests in marine biology, then astronomy, then computer programming, changing focus every few months with the intensity of someone who found the entire world fascinating. She asked questions constantly, about science, about ethics, about why people did bad things and whether they could become good again, about her mother, eventually, which led to difficult conversations that Darius handled as honestly as he could. She wasn't ready to be a mom, he told her one night when she was 10. That doesn't mean she didn't love you. It just means she knew she couldn't give you what you needed, so she let me do it instead. Do you think she ever thinks about me? I think she probably does, but I don't know for sure. Are you angry at her? Darius considered the question carefully. I used to be, but being angry at someone takes a lot of energy. I decided I'd rather use that energy loving you. Maya nodded slowly. That makes sense. She was quiet for a moment. Dad? Yeah, baby girl? I'm glad she gave me to you, even if it was hard, even if she should have stayed. I'm glad I got you. Darius pulled her into a hug and held on tight. I'm glad too, he whispered. Every single day. 3 years after the trial, on a Sunday afternoon in early spring, Darius took Maya to the park. She was 12 now. Too old for playgrounds, she insisted, but not too old to sit on a bench with her father and watch other kids play while she read a book about black holes. Did you know, she said without looking up, that if you fell into a black hole, time would slow down for you but speed up for everyone else? So you'd experience your death in slow motion while the entire universe aged around you. That sounds terrifying. It's physics. Physics is terrifying. She turned a page. Also beautiful. Terrifyingly beautiful. Darius smiled. His daughter had grown into someone extraordinary. Not because of him, he thought. In spite of everything. Because she was simply who she was. Brilliant and curious and unafraid of the big questions. A woman approached their bench. Professional attire. Careful posture. Something familiar about the way she moved. Darius looked up. Recognition hit him like a physical shock. Victoria Chen. She looked different. Older, obviously. Hair shorter. No expensive suits. Just simple clothes that hung loosely on a frame that had lost weight. The prison years had left their mark. But her eyes were the same. Sharp. Calculating. Though there was something else in them now. Something that hadn't been there before. Dr. Cole. Her voice was quieter than he remembered. I hope I'm not intruding. Maya looked up from her book. Dad? Who's this? Someone I helped a long time ago. Darius kept his voice neutral. Maya, why don't you give us a minute? Get some ice cream from the truck over there. He handed her a $10 bill. Maya looked between her father and the strange woman, curiosity evident on her face. But she took the money and walked toward the ice cream truck. Victoria watched her go. She's beautiful. She has your eyes. What are you doing here, Victoria? I got out 6 months ago. Good behavior. Completed a substance abuse program, even though I was never an addict. Took every rehabilitation course they offered. Victoria sat down on the far end of the bench, leaving plenty of space between them. I've been trying to figure out what to do with whatever time I have left. And you decided to find me? I decided to thank you. Properly. Victoria looked at him directly. What you did, Darius. Saving my life when you had every reason to let me die. Helping me find the courage to tell the truth. Stopping Daniel from destroying everything out of revenge. You changed the entire trajectory of my life. You changed it yourself. I just pushed. You did more than push. You showed me what it looked like to be a good person, even when it was hard. Even when nobody was watching. Victoria's voice cracked slightly. I spent 5 years in prison thinking about that. About you. About the kind of person you chose to be versus the kind of person I chose to be. And what did you conclude? That I wasted most of my life on things that didn't matter. Power, status, control. I built an empire and destroyed people to protect it, and in the end, none of it made me happy. None of it made me good. She paused. You built something small and quiet and real. A daughter who loves you. A job that lets you help people. A life that means something. That's worth more than anything I ever accumulated. Darius watched Maya at the ice cream truck, carefully selecting her flavor, counting the change. What are you going to do now? he asked. I don't know. I can't practice business anymore. Nobody would hire me anyway. My reputation is... She laughed bitterly. Well, you know about destroyed reputations. I do. I've been volunteering at a clinic downtown. Administrative work. Filing, scheduling, nothing important, Victoria shrugged. But it feels good to be useful without expecting anything in return. Maybe that's a start. Maybe it is. They sat in silence for a moment. Maya was walking back now, ice cream cone in hand, still watching them with curious eyes. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Victoria said quickly. I know I don't deserve that. I'm not asking for friendship or redemption or any of the things I probably need. I just wanted you to know that what you did mattered, that you made a difference, that some part of me is better because of you. Darius nodded slowly. I appreciate you saying that. And I wanted to ask one question, just one. Then I'll go. Ask. Victoria turned to face him fully. Was it worth it? Walking away from surgery, giving up the career you loved, all those years of overnight shifts and struggling and being invisible. Was it worth it? Darius looked at his daughter, 12 years old, brilliant and beautiful and entirely herself, walking toward him with chocolate ice cream on her chin and a book about black holes tucked under her arm. Every second, he said quietly. Every single second. Victoria followed his gaze. Something like peace settled over her features. That's what I thought. She stood up. Goodbye, Dr. Cole. Thank you for everything. She walked away without looking back. Maya reached the bench and sat down beside him. Who was that lady, Dad? Really? Someone who made a lot of mistakes and is trying to do better. Is she succeeding? Darius watched Victoria's figure recede into the distance. I think she might be. Eventually. Good. Maya licked her ice cream. Everyone deserves a second chance. That's what you always say. I say that? All the time. Usually when I've done something wrong and I'm scared you'll be mad. Darius laughed. And does it work? Every time, Maya grinned at him. You're kind of predictable, Dad. I prefer consistent. Same thing. They sat together on the bench, father and daughter, watching the world go by. The sun was warm. The park was full of families and children and dogs and all the ordinary beautiful chaos of life being lived. Dad? Yeah, baby girl? I'm glad you're my dad. Maya leaned against his shoulder. I know I don't say it enough, but I'm really glad. Darius put his arm around her. I'm glad too, more than you'll ever know. I know. She said it with the absolute certainty of a child who had never doubted she was loved. You show me every day. 2 years later, on Maya's 14th birthday, she asked Darius for something unusual. I want to visit the hospital where you work. I want to see what you do. Darius hesitated. The ER wasn't a place for teenagers. Blood and trauma and death, the raw edges of human existence on full display. But Maya had that look in her eyes, the one that meant she'd already made up her mind and was just waiting for him to catch up. Are you sure? I want to understand. Maya's voice was serious. You've spent my whole life helping people. I want to see it. I want to know what it looks like. So Darius took her to work. He showed her the trauma bays, the nurses' station, the equipment that kept people alive when their bodies wanted to give up. He introduced her to Maria, who hugged her like a long-lost niece, and to Dr. Patterson, who told Maya stories about her father that made her laugh until she cried. At the end of the tour, they stood in the hallway outside the emergency department, watching the controlled chaos through the windows. "It's intense," Maya said quietly. "It is. But you love it." "I do." Darius looked at his daughter. "Not because of the drama or the adrenaline. Because every person who comes through those doors is someone's father or mother or child. And maybe, if I'm good enough and fast enough and don't give up, I can send them home to the people who love them." "That's beautiful." "It's just the truth." Maya was quiet for a long moment. Then she said something that changed everything. "I want to be a doctor." Darius turned to look at her. "What?" "Not right now, obviously, but eventually. I've been thinking about it for a while. I like science. I like helping people. And I've watched you my whole life, Dad. I've watched you come home exhausted but satisfied. I've watched you put everyone else first and somehow still have enough left for me." She met his eyes. "I want to be like that. I want to matter the way you matter." Darius felt something swell in his chest. Pride, fear, love so vast it almost hurt. "It's hard work," he said, his voice rough. "Years of school, impossible hours, heartbreak when you lose patients you did everything to save." "I know." "You'll miss birthdays and holidays. You'll be tired all the time. You'll question whether it's worth it at least once a week." "I know." "And you'll have to fight for everything. Because the world doesn't make it easy for people who want to do good. It tests you. It breaks you down. And you have to decide, over and over, to keep going anyway." "I know, Dad." Maya took his hand. "I've been watching you do it my whole life. I think I learned from the best." Darius pulled his daughter into a hug, held her the way he'd held her when she was 6 weeks old, brand new to his life, the reason he'd given up everything and gained everything in return. "I'm so proud of you," he whispered. "I'm so unbelievably proud." "I haven't done anything yet." "You've become who you are. That's everything." They stood there in the hospital hallway, father and daughter, while life and death played out around them. The machines beeped. The phones rang. The nurses rushed. And in the middle of it all, something new began. A legacy passing from one generation to the next. A choice being made about what kind of person to be. Years later, when people asked Dr. Maya Cole why she became a physician, she always told the same story about a father who worked overnight shifts so he could be home when she needed him. About a man who gave up a brilliant career to build a quiet life that mattered. About a parent who showed her, every single day, what it meant to help people, even when it was hard, even when no one was watching, even when the world gave you every reason to stop. She told them about the night her father saved a woman who had destroyed him, because being good wasn't about who deserved it. She told them about the choice between revenge and mercy, and how her father had always chosen mercy. She told them about a question asked every night at bedtime, and an answer that never wavered. "Did you help someone today, Daddy?" "Yes, baby girl, I did." And when her own patients asked Dr. Maya Cole how she stayed hopeful in a profession full of heartbreak, she smiled and gave them the same answer her father had given her, years ago, on a bench in a park on a Sunday afternoon. You focus on what matters. You show up every day. You do the right thing, even when it's hard. And you remember that the kind of person you are doesn't depend on the kind of person anyone else is. You get to choose who you want to be, every single time. Some people leave behind empires, corporate legacies, wealth that echoes through generations. Darius Cole left behind something better. A daughter who knew, without any doubt, that she was loved. A community of patients whose lives he had saved, one night at a time. And a simple truth that outlasted everything else. That the measure of a life isn't what you accumulate or what you achieve, but who you become when everything is stripped away, and who you help along the way. He had been a brilliant surgeon once. He had been destroyed by people who valued profit over truth. He had rebuilt himself from nothing, in the margins of the life he'd planned, in the space between midnight and dawn. And in the end, he had become something more than he ever imagined. Not a hero. Never a hero. Just a father who was there every single night. Just a doctor who helped people every single shift. Just a man who chose, again and again, to be good. That was enough. That was everything. The end.